And I'm Jane Dutton, and in the next half an hour we'll take a look at the day's top local and international news. This is ENCA. The rand is again taking a hit around talk of Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's future. The state provisionally drops charges against 2 former Hawks bosses. And 2 people are dead after a small plane crashed into a residential home in Midrand. More on our top stories in a moment. First, President Cyril Ramaphosa has delivered this year's annual Desmond Tutu International Peace Lecture in Cape Town. Our reporter, Lester Kivet, attended the lecture. He joins us now. What did he have to say, Lester?
Well, a seemingly broad address here by President Cyril Ramaphosa, touching on very topical issues like social justice, like economic transformation. But I think what stuck out for me is a call to South Africa to return to its moral core and regain its moral compass in which the Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu so was for South Africa for many years during the struggle against apartheid and in our transitioning phase. The President saying that, speaking in quite detail about freedoms, in constitutional freedoms which South Africans enjoys. But at the same time, if we have such a contrast in economic equality in South Africa, the President mentioning that 10% of the population owning more than 90% of the wealth in the country, says that not until that we find South Africa in a space of economic equality, therefore we won't reach those economic and social justice freedoms which are enshrined in the Constitution, which Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu so for such a long time fought for, in not only in his ministry, but also in his anti-apartheid struggle.
And the man you're talking about, that powerhouse, Tutu, was lying in his hospital bed watching, apparently. Any news about him?
Well, earlier on I spoke to his daughter, Tutu. He said that while he is still recovering from a reoccurring infection and has been undergoing tests for the last week or so now in hospital, he is in good spirits. On Sunday, he celebrated his 87th birthday in hospital. Tutu saying that he was in good spirits, laughing and joking with his children and his grandchildren, as well as his wife Leah, who has been by his side during this time. But there was a real feeling that the Arch was missed here this evening. I've been to several of Desmond Tutu peace lectures over the last few years, and that energy that the Arch brings, that distinctive giggle that he has, in that welcoming embrace, he almost feels as if he can hug the entire room. That was somewhat missing this evening, and we do understand that he did watch the lecture from his hospital bed, not too far away from hospital, not too far away from where we are this evening. But his daughter Tutu says his fight does not stop while he's retired, while he says he's not in the public eye. His voice and his moral message and his moral conscience still lingers in South Africa, and obviously is a lesson for not only President Cyril Ramaphosa here tonight, but for all South Africans and all people around the world.
Yeah, an important time, isn't it, as we've got 3 former apartheid fighters in hospital, a time when people really are questioning the morality and who's going to hold the moral compass now going forward, and lots of issues to be addressed on this important day. Lester Kivet in Cape Town, thank you very much for that. This compounds exactly what I'm saying. Nhlanhla Nene and his dubious relationship with the rand. Whenever there's news about him, the currency is affected. Today, not in a good way. So we need to know, and know soon, will the Finance Minister stay long enough to deliver the midterm budget policy statement in 2 weeks' time? Nene has reportedly asked President Cyril Ramaphosa to allow him to resign over lying about how many times he'd met the Guptas. Nene, who previously told ENCA he bumped into the brothers once or twice, told the State Capture Commission that he met them several times on official duty. Nene has apologized, but as Aldrin Sampier reports, Ramaphosa continues to face pressure to sack the minister.
So with all this uncertainty around the fate of Nhlanhla Nene, key institutions that can give us some sort of detail are keeping mum. Take, for instance, Treasury, When we contacted Treasury, they said speak to the presidency because it is the president who appoints the minister. And when we tried to get a hold of the presidency, well, they were unavailable. But in an article by Reuters, in that article, the presidency spokesperson, Kusela Diko, is quoted as saying that the presidency has not heard anything of Nhlanhla Nene resigning or requesting to resign. While on the other hand, you have the ANC, which of course deploys its members into these various institutions of government. And well, just take a listen to what the ANC had to say about this noise around Nhlanhla Nene's fate.
If there are any other developments that relate to current affairs, we will be able to brief members of the media. What we had confirmed in the public was that our officials had a very fruitful lekgotla, which emphasized on the need to steam ahead with unity and renewal of the organization, as was imposed on us by the 54th National Conference. That is the immediate focus of the African National Congress. If there's any other thing that happens at a level of government which requires the ANC to communicate, we always come back to yourselves and make sure that you are aware of those developments.
And while the Rand has taken a knock over the speculation around Nhlanhla Nene's fate, the presidency is yet to come out to officially allay fears. And as you know, in politics in South Africa, once there's no communication, it leaves the door open for speculation.
Whatever he decides to do with the Nhlanhla Nene matter, then another minister is going to appear in front of that commission of inquiry by Deputy Chief Justice, and then other revelations will come up. Another minister, and then so whatever he does now will set pace and tone of how we expect him to react at all moments when a minister in his cabinet is implicated.
There shouldn't be a culture where something you say to the commission that is not of a criminal nature leads to the end of your career. That would not assist the process of coming to terms with and dealing with what happened during the Zuma presidency.
Whatever the fate of Nhlanhla Nene, one thing is certain, that there will be a shift in President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet, taking into consideration, of course, that there's a vacancy in the Ministry of Environmental Affairs after the passing on of former Minister Edna Molewa. And some factions within the ANC believe that the president may just use this opportunity to rid his cabinet of some ministers who have been implicated in Project State Capture. Aldrin St-Pierre, Johannesburg.
The state will no longer be prosecuting two former senior Hawks officials, giving credence to the idea the charges were a political smear campaign. Prosecutors provisionally withdrew charges against former Hawks head Anwar Dramat and Gauteng head Shadrack Sibiya. They were arrested and charged in 2016 along with Leslie Maluleke, who still faces prosecution. Ian says Aaron Bates was in court.
On Monday, the state provisionally withdrew charges against Anwar Dramat and Shadrack Sibiya. But Leslie Cowboy Maluleke is still in the firing line.
They might apply for further particulars. Mr. Maluleke can be postponed to the 12th of November. He's out on bail, and his bail may be extended.
Accused number one faces charges including abduction, defeating the ends of justice and contravening the Immigration Act. The charges relate to the rendition or handing over of several Zimbabwean suspects between late 2010 and early 2011. The suspects were handed over to Zimbabwean police, after which some died in custody. Maluleke, who also goes by the nickname Cowboy, is due back in court next month. The history of this case suggests law enforcement was fast becoming the Wild West by the time the trio were arrested and charged in early 2016.
When in fact there is no case against us and we were charged based on false evidence, manufactured evidence. So I thought that we were going to be given an opportunity to clear our name at least, but that didn't happen. This is a messed up case.
A few blocks away from the North Gauteng High Court, 3 more men feel vindicated by the state's provisional withdrawal. Head of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, Robert McBride, was himself suspended in connection with the renditions. Then Police Minister Nathi Nhleko suspended him in 2015 after IPID filed a report recommending neither Dramat nor Sibiya be charged. The decision to suspend McBride, however, was declared invalid and set aside by the Constitutional Court in September 2016.
The question is, why were we being charged in the first place, and why was Dramat and Sibia being charged? When there was... Well, obviously, elements in the NPA were complicit in ensuring that the agenda by the political principal in Minister Nhleko was being engendered, and that is why, that's the only reason we can come up to, because we were put under immense pressure, myself and Kuba, to try and implicate Mr. McBride in some wrongdoing when there wasn't such.
And IPID's work came at a price.
The phone's been tapped, all of our phones have been tapped, they've looked at all our records. So it's fine, we've been accustomed to invasive approaches. It reminds us of the days during apartheid when we were all activists resisting against the apartheid system. That kind of invasion was normal. The sad part is that this invasion of people's lives and intrusive behavior and victimization happened during democracy, and that is the sad part.
ENCA invited both the acting National Director of Public Prosecutions and the NPA spokesperson for comment. They declined. The dust may have somewhat settled for Dramat and Sibia, but one cowboy returns to court on the 12th of November. Maluleke alleges the Zimbabwean renditions were entirely above board. Aaron Bates, North Gauteng High Court.
A light aircraft crashed into a house in Midrand, claiming the lives of the pilot and the gardener on the ground. Our reporter, Ditiro Selepe, rushed to the scene soon after the accident and filed this report.
The light aircraft crashed into the backyard of a home in the suburb of Midrand. Police and emergency services responded and found 2 fatalities.
This plane was with one pilot who happened to be female. In the yard where the plane crashed, there was a man who was weak. He was hit by the plane. Both the man who was waking as well as the pilot died at the scene.
Eyewitnesses described what they saw.
I just saw this plane descending, and I was under shock, and I just started screaming hysterically because I knew for a fact it was going to hit one of the houses.
I saw a plane go in front of me about 3 meters away from our vehicle. It went all the way up about 6 stories high, and it turned around and just went straight and landed on its nose. I jumped out of my car, shouted at the gate. The lady opened for me. I ran inside to see if I could help somebody. I found a lady inside the plane, and the gardener that was in the garden busy working also got hurt.
The police have opened an inquest docket, and the Civil Aviation Authority is also set to investigate the crash. Ditiro Selepe, Midrand.
So teaching and learning have resumed without incident at the Tshwane University of Technology, Shoshanguve campus. The institution was forced to close its doors for 6 weeks. It's after a student was allegedly shot dead by police during protests, and his death triggered more violence. Now students are returning to the campus. 0ctober was there.
Amid the vandalism and charred remains of debris from the riot, students return to this campus under reasonable apprehension. Taking no chances, there are more boots on the ground to keep law and order. There's relief and excitement in the air as students return to their books for the first time in 6 weeks.
I'm just glad we're back, since almost everyone wanted to be back at school. Because, you know, exams are around the corner.
At least it feels safe, but at the end of the day, the pressure is going to be great. I'm not sure whether the strike is going to resume again or not. It's a risk coming here.
We have to push ourselves. Even extra classes, maybe it will do it.
Student leaders are now demanding a clear academic catch-up plan.
On weekends, students must also attend. There must also be the student advisors, bring other lectures, even from outsource other lectures from other universities to also come and assist students, because we also need extra classes at night. There's no time, we're only left with 1 month to examination.
TUT says it will also support students by moving the exams.
I'll be going to Senate very soon to ask for permission for this campus in particular to start exams somewhere on the 3rd of December and finish the exams on the 21st of December, because we have to really make up the lost time, because there's no way we can take students to the exam without them being prepared thoroughly, having completed the syllabus.
While the protests sparked by the killing of a student have ended, the SRC says it's losing hope in the IPED's probe of Katlego Munaring's death.
We are going to decide if ever we're going to shut down the campus or not. Because if they come back to us and tell us that the police are not the ones who shot down Comrade Katlego, and we saw it happening, we are not going to accept it. It means that the whole of TUT will not be operational.
IPED says their investigation into the fatal shooting is still ongoing. 0ctober, Pretoria.
Commercial farmers will be expected to participate in a compulsory agricultural census. The last one of its kind was done 11 years ago. The data collected will go some way towards assisting government to determine risks to food security. NCA's Dimakatso Tugwana reports.
55 million rand agricultural census will provide a snapshot of the sector. It will help provide data to assess the severity of food insecurity in the country. Stats SA says the census will focus solely on commercial farmers big enough to produce for profit and pay tax.
The census will ask both production information as well as financial information. Although it will ask the type of ownership, not necessarily who it is. So, for example, if a commercial farm is in a trust, it will be indicated this is being farmed as a trust, but we're not then interested in what the names of the 5 trustees, for example, would be.
Even though the census is meant to be done every 5 years, the last census was done just over 10 years ago due to a lack of funding. The current debate on land expropriation is not expected to have an impact on the census.
We are not explicitly worried to the extent that we don't want to run the census. We still feel that through all the publicity initiatives that we do, we will be able to secure a very high response rate. We rely heavily on the individual farmers to also give their participation.
Starting next week, 600 State SA field workers will be visiting farms across the country to determine things like the number of commercial farmers, farm sizes, the types of crops being produced.
Our support structure will always be on standby. In the event where there is doubt about whether the people that are out there in the field are indeed State SA staff members, we should be able to respond.
Farmers who choose not to participate in this compulsory census may face a 10,000 rand fine or 6 months in prison. Statistics South Africa plans to complete the work in April and publish the results in November 2019. Dimakatso Tugwana, Pretoria.
Scientists say it is the final call to prevent a climate catastrophe. Those details coming up.